Hey friends, welcome back to another Field and Garden podcast. It is your friend in flowers, Lisa Mason Ziegler, and thanks for dropping in. And hey friends, if you haven't heard yet, you can actually catch my podcast over on my YouTube channel where there is a video that goes along with the podcast. If you want to see me actually yammering on here, I would be happy for you to join me over there. And friends, I just appreciate all the sweet comments and love your reviews, and it helps us so much. So if you're enjoying our podcast, if you, it only has to be 5 words, friends, just say a couple words about the podcast and post it. It just helps the podcast apps show our podcast to more browsers is what that's all about. And I appreciate it. Y'all have been so kind and generous, and we just really, really love that. And so this podcast is made possible by thegardenersworkshop.com, which is where it all started, friends. That's our home base to our all of our resources, our online garden shop, our online courses, our blogs, our podcasts. We've just got a lot of great stuff going on over there. And we invite you to go on over and check it out and become a part of it and sign up for our farm news so you don't miss out on anything new coming down the pike. So I'm kind of hot on the topic these days, and it's cool flowers. And cool flowers, if you're not familiar, that's the title of a book that I wrote actually 10 years ago. This is the 10-year anniversary, and it is more popular and becoming more well-known today than it did when it first came out, which is kind of unusual for a book. But the concept, which I didn't make it up, y'all, I just rekindled what our grandparents and their parents did long before us. It's kind of awkward. It's kind of different than what we think in gardening about planting times and cool season gardening and cold gardening. And it's kind of scary. And that's what that book really clears the air about. It's a simple little book that just explains the concept. And I encourage you to check it out. Of course, it's available in booksellers everywhere, but when you purchase it through thegardenersworkshop.com, you also get my free book study, which is a little video deal kind of behind the scenes and what was, what I was thinking when we wrote all of that. And you can check that out. And the links to all of this will be in the notes below this video and this podcast. And friends, I also have a brand new webinar just out, and I would love for you to have it. It is free. It is the 3 foolproof steps to success with cool flowers. And it's the 3 things that I see people struggling with the most. And so I would love for you to get that and check it out. And I just hit over those things that are often misunderstood or they're just missed. I know it's a lot to take in. So check that out. So today's podcast, the title is Unveiling the Truth on Cool Flowers, or actually it's Cool Flowers, Unveiling the Truth, right? And if you are a Southerner, as I am, or if you're a really Northerner, you might think that the cool flower concept, which, because that's the name of the book, Cool Flowers, the concept of growing this group has kind of become named and keyed in the cut flower industry anyway as the cool flower concept. That is like the method you grow this whole family of flowers. And it's tweakable to different flowers in that family, but in general, right? And if you are a Southerner, as I am, or that Northerner I was just pointing to, you might think that the cool flower concept doesn't apply to you because you live in the South, it's too hot, our summers are too long. And if you're in the North, you're thinking, oh, I can't fall plant anything. We get 6 feet of snow here. Well, friends, there's more to it than that. And I want to just say that nothing could be further from the truth. In fact, once you master your sweet spot for when you should plant this family of flowers, you will become like the local hero. I'm not kidding you. If you are a flower farmer, first off, all your grower friends will be totally envious, but your customers will think you're a miracle worker. And it's not really that hard, y'all. It's just that it's kind of a foreign language to us in the gardening world. And it's because of the word annual that's in cool season hardy annual. Annual says to everybody, the most commonly known annuals, like, let's just say, tomatoes, basil, zinnias, sunflowers, summer annuals. The cool season hardy annual family just kind of fell away years ago for many different reasons. But when you say the word annual, people are like, you can't plant those when it's getting ready to go into winter or when you're just coming out of winter. And it's just a lot of misconceptions, y'all. And that's the myth busting that I want to bust today. So I want to first start off by saying, so I was at farmers markets for about 15 years, and I spent years at the farmers markets listening to customers. First off, the sweetest thing was, so we grew sweet peas. Sweet peas, is something that sweet peas and bells of Ireland are the two flowers that we hear the same comment from people. When they see them, they say, oh my gosh, my grandma used to grow those. It just brings up these warm, fuzzy, wonderful feelings out of people. And then the next line is, but I can't grow them. It gets too hot here, or I've tried 5 years in a row and I just didn't have any success. I mean, we heard it over and over and over. Literally, it's really funny. When the sweet pea season was in, we would have a little peanut gallery. My sister would literally stand at our booth. It was a very busy farmer's market. And our little hook was that Suzanne would stand out in front of our booth with a big old handful of sweet peas, very fragrant, and offer to people, would you like to have a smell? Want to have a sniff? And when they smell them, it's like they go through the whole thing. Oh my gosh, my grandma or my mom or somebody they knew used to grow them and they haven't smelled them since then. And it just stirred up all these great memories. Well, then we say, come over here and stand for a minute. And Suzanne would do it to the next person. And it's just funny. The same thing was said over and over and over again. So this group of flowers was grown by the previous generations. And it just goes to kind of affirm that what the concept is not anything new. It just had to be brought back to light and to help us understand how we actually apply that for us today. And so, I hear from Southerner gardeners everywhere that have been, because Cool Flowers has been out for 10 years, y'all. And I actually lectured on this, taught and gave conferences and programs to gardeners and farmers all over the country for 10 years before the book came out. So we have people that have been practicing this concept, taking the step, jumping off the cliff, trusting that it was going to work for 2 decades now, right? And so we hear from Southerners that are doing it, deep South Southerners, and we hear from the most Northerners that they're making Cool Flowers work for them. So what the Northerner people that are like having heavy snow loads, really, they only hear and think about fall planting. And in fact, that may be very true. You may not be able to fall plant anything, but that's only half of the Cool Flower story. The very early spring planting is the other half, and that is your sweet spot. So the myth that I want to bust is that Cool Flowers is for everyone. Everyone, everywhere. It's just that we may all have different planting timelines, right? Myth busted. The truth has been revealed, right? So I don't want anybody to feel left out. Now, if you live in South America where it's tropical all the time, there may be some that will do okay for you, but those are the struggle people, is when they just are in hot tropics year round. That's the struggle. And I still contend that you might be able to find that window of the coolest temps to make some work for you. So if you aren't familiar with who this family is, as so many people aren't, the book Cool Flowers really explains the concept of how to grow cool season hardy annuals and just some of those go-to step-by-steps. And the thing about the cool season hardy annuals is that they are spring bloomers most often. There are some that will bloom in summer, but in general, these are the flowers that are that first out of the gate during those most high demand, easiest time to sell cut flowers. Depending on where you are in the country, for me here in zone 8 in mid-Atlantic, Virginia, we start having blooms the end of March, ramping up in April. May is jam-packed, and then we're going into June, and they're petering out in July. So we're talking about over several months, right? So remember, why is this so worth it? Because the spring is the easiest time of the year to sell cut flowers. I mean, you don't even have to do much selling. Have you ever gone to a nursery, really like the month before you're really supposed to be planting on a warm, sunny day and seeing how people are buying everything in sight? It's the same thing with flowers. If you're the first farmer to market with cut flowers at the farmer's market, you're going to snag customers that will most likely stay with you all summer. The first person to market usually gets that. And this is the family that'll actually do that. So first I'm going to go through some Southerner tips, and then I'm going to go through some Northerner tips. So if you're Northerner, hang on, because I have some great ideas for you too. So the thing we hear from most Southerners is we can't grow those here. Sweet peas being one of the most, people just want to grow sweet peas, right? And I heard it over and over and over again. We can't grow them. But friends, they are just the perfect example. If you are in the South, I'm in zone 8. That's according to the USDA's winter hardiness zone map. And I can plant almost all the cool season hardy annuals. There's a couple that don't really survive well here, and that would be stock and straw flowers. We only plant them in the other planting optimal time, which is very early spring. So my garden is loaded with fall planted flowers. And so they won't grow here when we plant them in spring, what people call spring. That's like right at your last frost date. By that time, when you follow the cool flower concept, your plants are well established and ready to hit the ground running. They've been in the ground. They've laid down roots. They're ready to hit the ground running, right? But if you plant them that late, which is so the case for most of us, because we think that's what we're supposed to do, right? And so who are these flowers? For me, the bells of Ireland and snapdragons, they just take your breath away when we get them in the ground at the same time. And I mean, it's something that Southerners think have just never, ever been possible. And so I don't know where you are, but many of us have for years planted pansies in the fall. You use them for fall decoration in your containers and maybe even out in beds. Then they kind of get frozen during the winter. But guess what? As soon as they come out of spring into spring, they restart the show. Friends, pansies are cool season hardy annuals. They have like over 40 that I know of kissing cousins. They aren't related, but they are other cool season annuals that we've been talking about here, right? Poppies and sweet peas and snapdragons and feverfew and all these hardy annual rudbeckias. And I'm just going through my garden. I mean, calendula and just so larkspur and nigella. I mean, the list goes on and on. When we take the plunge and follow the concept and trust that the process is going to work and fall plant, you will never turn back. You won't know how you lived without them. Especially if you're a flower farmer, this is going to be your biggest cash crop of the year. I've spoken in previous podcasts about we are seeing farmers now building their model around having huge cash crops in spring and either shutting down for the midst of summer and restarting in fall, or just selling during spring when that high demand is there, and just getting as much and as high quality as possible. So here's the other thing about Southerners that we never knew, that the cool flower concept definitely helps us ramp up. Sometimes there's perennials that grow up in the north that we just can't grow as perennials in the south. And the one that comes to mind that we have grown this concept, done the cool flower concept with for years, is delphiniums. Delphiniums are definitely a perennial in New England and Nebraska and all of those, in Pennsylvania, all those places that have deep cold winters and their summers aren't as long and brutal as our summers are. So we treat them as a hardy annual. We either buy plants in the fall, or we start from seed. We plant them following the cool flower concept fall planting. We know that they're going to spend all winter setting up housekeeping, getting happy and healthy. And then when spring hits, they are ready to hit the ground. June for us is when delphiniums, Pacific giants is one, and also oriental blue belladonnas. Both of those. June is just packed with gorgeous delphiniums, and maybe even a little bit into July. It really depends on the season we have. However, late July and August are so brutal on those plants. They stress them out completely and they fall victim to disease and pests. So guess what, friends? We just pull them out because that crop is done. We treat them like hardy annuals and just restart them every year. And that way we get to enjoy and have the harvest of the crops, but we don't have the frustration and failure of trying to treat them like a perennial. And there are others that may fall into that, and you'll know those perennials you might plant every fall and they perform great the first year, but then they just seem to die out. Those are the ones we treat like hardy annuals, y'all. We accept them for what they are, right? And so this confusion of when to plant is what has really taken this whole family away from the South. I've mentioned before with cool flowers, the way I found cool flowers was I learned about 2 or 3 cool season hardy annuals as I was exploring becoming a flower farmer in the late 90s. And then when I learned about them, I'm like, oh gosh, there's got to be others, right? And I started reading old pre-printing, pre-1950s garden books to learn about others that also fell into this family, right? And what I kind of discovered is that gardening back in those days was so much more of a part of a family home than how it had kind of evolved here in the last few decades. I definitely believe it's coming back now. But as moms went to work and they became 2 people working households, the home garden kind of went by the wayside, and they felt like it was a step up. This was my parents. They felt like it was a step up in society to be able to buy your vegetables at the grocery store instead of having to grow them yourself, right? And what that did is it created a disconnect between the gardener and the garden. I mean, our grandmas knew the behaviors and the tendencies of the different plants. They knew peas were cool season hardy annuals. They knew kale and lettuce and radishes and broccoli and cauliflower and all of those and beets were all cool season hardy annuals. They were in tune with that. And they also knew that, guess what? Sweet pea flowers were cool season. They were planting snapdragons and larkspur. They were planting larkspur in the winter amongst their peonies to bloom at the same time. They knew all that. Well, because of our disconnect, we kind of lost that whole family, and it is so confusing. So then on top of confusion, add the fear. I really understand how fearful it is to think about fall planting. I faced it too, y'all, to think about starting all these seeds because first off, you have to pretty much start from seed for cool flowers because you're not going to find the plants for sale in the nursery. Because guess what? People are not in nurseries shopping to plant at those times of the year. I mean, you can't blame the nurseries. They do it. I mean, I actually, for another little rabbit hole, years ago when I first started going to farmers markets, people were like, oh my gosh, we would buy plants at the proper time. So I started tons of cool flowers to sell transplants in the fall at the farmers market. Y'all, I couldn't give them away. People were just too afraid. So I totally understand why we're afraid. So you have to start from seed if you want to be a cool flower gardener farmer. And it is terrifying to go through all that seed starting and then to think about planting those little plants out in the garden with winter just around the corner. Folks, trust the process and those people that have been doing it. And as long as you are following the concept, which means you're only fall planting those cool season hardy annuals that are winter hardy in your winter hardiness zone. And the whole concept, we have all the resources that you need. Start with the book, y'all. It's the basics. That's where you really get started. It is so frightening, but to just take the plunge and trust the process and that it's going to work. So I want to just tell a little story. One of the things that really helped me to overcome my fear. So it's been more than a decade now. Our sweet golden retriever, Babs, she is actually the golden that's in the book, Cool Flowers, running down the pathway. Babs died suddenly in January. Well, about that time, Cool Flowers, that was in high production years, y'all. We probably had 40, 120-foot beds of Cool Flowers. It was January. They were fully in, and a snowstorm was coming, an ice storm followed by a snowstorm. So all I was really able to do, and I did it actually at night under a flashlight, I went out and took my row covers down. We use row covers not for cold protection, but to protect from wind and varmints. And when snow and any frozen precipitation is coming, you always take your row covers down because they will crush and suffocate your plants. Ice and snow are a far better insulator than your row cover is. So I went out and uncovered all those beds. And I just thought, with this weather and it was going down to single digits, I thought we're just going to lose them all, but I didn't even care. We were just so devastated over Babs. So I uncovered all the beds. And friends, I'm here to tell you, I didn't even go out there for days on end. That was a very long, it was because it was so cold, the snow stayed a long time. And so all of my Cool Flowers, they didn't just survive that cold weather. They actually came out thriving. It was like all that water just really, really helped them. You just have to trust the process. If you follow the concept steps, you will have success. So let me just give you guys some tips for you northerners. So because of deep snow load and frigid temperatures, northerners perhaps really can't fall plant. For a plant to survive under 6 feet of snow, it's possible, but not likely. And why would you even do it? So you have to really perfect and find your really sweet spot in very early spring. So very early spring is 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. Now, I know some people are thinking, are you kidding me? 6 weeks before my last frost date, I'm still knee deep in snow. Well, that's fine. And that's reality, right? But first, I want you to say, as a jumping off spot, as you experiment, because we have people that are doing it, y'all. This is not like pulling a rabbit out of my hat. Is you need to think, I can get this family of flowers in the ground in very early spring, long before I can plant a warm season. So you may not be able to get the full 6 to 8 week window, but you have something else going for you. First off, you can get them in as early as you can get in. And I'm going to give you some tips that I've gotten from people that have been in those conditions and what they're kind of doing. But what you have to remember is people that are in these deep snow load, very late last frost dates, typically don't have the long, hot, humid summers that us Southerners do. So oftentimes, these cool season hardy annuals, when you get them in the ground to get established before they really have to start performing, they'll go all summer for you, right up till frost. Unlike us Southerners, if those plants would never make it through our 100-degree days. So you see what I mean? It's like you have to step back and say, maybe there is a window for me here. First off, embrace very early spring. You don't even think about fall planting, maybe. You may, after a few years of success. Obviously, if you have houses, you can plant in houses with low tunnels, hoop houses with no heat, under low tunnels in those houses and have success. We do see people actually doing that. But very early spring is going to be your sweet spot. It's the other half of the story. But here's the thing. And this is where people get glitched. And that's why I have started talking about Cool Flowers so much earlier in the season instead of waiting until August, September, and October. Is particularly for you people that have to very early spring plant, you need to prepare those planting beds the previous fall or late summer when it's not wet, snow covered, and frozen. We literally prepare our very early spring plantings beds right alongside our fall planted beds, except we just don't plant in the very early spring ones. They're finished, they're complete. The soil is prepared And when I say the irrigation's laying down, we don't hook them up. They've never had water run through it. Nothing is going to freeze because there's no water in it, right? The bed is totally prepared and it's just left to sit there all winter. So when my window comes in very early spring, whenever that is, you literally just put your plants into the ground. And so I will say that the biggest challenge for people in the most northern regions is direct sowing. And we do share some tips in the Cut Flower Handbook and in Cool Flowers about pre-sprouting those seeds that really benefit for direct seeding, just sprouting them indoors to plant them out in very early spring, because you can plant those seeds outside in the deep throes of winter, but that seed's just going to sit there and wait for its conditions. You don't get that established benefit of the Cool Flowers benefit, right? So pre-sprouting is definitely, that's like graduate work though. That's like get your system down, planting those plants that prefer to be planted by transplants first. So we are huge fans of preparing in the fall or late summer, depending on when your first frost is, and getting that ground prepared, ready and waiting. Literally, you're just plugging them in there. And it's all about the timing of when you plant, friends. And the big thing about Cool Flowers is they need excellent drainage, and we go up and above to protect young plants from cold whipping wind. You know, low tunnels with row cover can really help to do that. And I'll tell you a tip I was at a conference that I think they were in Alberta, Canada farmer, zone 3 or 4, told us that she prepares her beds, totally finishes them off. She uses film. And then she lets the snow come, lets whatever happen. And then I guess it was probably March or April, because her last frost date's mid-June, right? She lays a silage tarp on top of the snow to help heat, and it just melts. I mean, it takes time, but it can melt the snow quicker than it being out in the open. So that's just one little tip. So finding and creating the conditions in your garden is going to lead you to find out that there is a cash crop for you in spring that you never even knew existed before, right? The goal is we have to really help ourselves to believe and understand that hardy annuals will take so much deeper cold. So those cool season hardy annuals, let's just take Rudbeckia. So first off, Rudbeckia, like some of the other families, are very confusing. There are perennial Rudbeckias and there's hardy annual Rudbeckias. I only grow the hardy annual varieties. There's like 9 of them that I grow. And they are winter hardy to zone 5. And you know, you can plant them into deep cold, but if you have super deep snow, they might not just be able to get the light that they need through the winter to keep them dormant and alive, right? So planting in very early spring doesn't mean you're waiting until it's not freezing weather, because these cool season hardy annuals will take frozen, deep cold. They just might not take it for a long period of time, like a long winter. And so I want you to not be afraid to push the envelope, because we have a lot of people that live in zones that don't have snow load, right? And you can make use of the 6 to 8 weeks before your last frost date. That's that window for very early spring. And again, I want to just say, you're going to get this family in the ground, you Northerners, long before you could ever begin to think about planting some warm season tender annuals, right? So you're going to ramp up your game. And the other thing is, so if you're planting in very early spring and you are aware there is not a long, hot, humid summer, you know, those plants are going to just go all summer, and you may just be able to harvest right up until frost. However, I have found, you know, an annual is an annual. That means their life cycle is typically about 1 year. If they go through their blooming time, they really are not going to survive a second winter. If you wanted to try to do that, you experiment with newly planted transplants that are young and small and have lots of energy and have not used up all of their gas. And then I'm going to leave you Northerners with this idea. Well, before I wrap this up, there is just so little documentation about how cold cool season hardy annuals can survive. I mean, literally, much of the information in the Cool Flower book, which was the first book I published that included this information, a lot of that was based on what we did in our garden here for over a decade and a half. Because there was no documentation. It wasn't widely published or recorded. And so we have begun to gather information since then. And a lot of that is in the Cut Flower Handbook. But I just want to say that if you live in a more northern region beyond, zone 5 and zone 4 and zone 3, those people that really have tough winters, do a little experimenting. And because my conclusion is that many of the cool flowers that I grow in my garden are cold, hardy, be way beyond zone 8 and 7 and 6, and even potentially 5. But they have to be found out, and you just have to really, and if you're going to test that, you just have to be sure that you're planting on a timely timeline for your frost date so they have time to get established before they go dormant for winter. There's just so much work to be done on this, y'all, and there is such a benefit. Spring blooms, taller stems, more stems. The plants are more disease and pest resistant just because they are so well established. There's just nothing but pluses, y'all. Nothing but pluses. So remember, we have a brand new webinar that I've done. It's called the 3 Foolproof Steps to Success with Cool Flowers. And it's those steps that I see people, they either misunderstand or they don't understand or they skip it or they just don't understand how important it is. So grab that free webinar. It's in the show notes, and would love for you to have that. And I just, friends, want you to fill your garden with spring blooms because remember, that's the easiest time of the year to sell flowers. I think that launching your business as I did on a fall planted or a very early spring planted cool flower garden is a clinch. It is a hook to get you in the door when they are in high demand. And it's just easier and getting to market first, right? So friends, I hope you're going to fill your garden with spring blooms. And remember, you can learn more about all the work that we're doing over at thegardenersworkshop.com. We have a phone app where we have a live shopping show on Friday where we highlight the harvest each week. You get to see what we're harvesting here on our farm. We have a great farm newsletter that shares content and what is going on. A fully stocked online garden shop, online course library, tons of resources all over there just for you because our mission is to empower cut flower fanciers and growers to start and grow their businesses. All right, friends, till we meet again.